Welcome everybody. This is the 642 and I'm very glad to have you all here, and I hope you can learn something, maybe have a chuckle or two. Yeah, you know. But let's jump right into it. So we're going to be looking at trinomial factorization, and we're going to be looking at the special case in which the coefficient will be 1. So this means that a is going to be equals to 1. So we're going to be dealing with basically something like this: x squared plus bx plus c, from which we got that from the standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. If a is equals to 1, this is what we get. Simple enough. Alright, so here we're dealing with a quadratic function or a quadratic expression, which will have 3 terms. So 3 terms, trinomial, the tri there just means 3. And yeah. So this basically is going to be the cash cow, the mark machine. This is where you're going to get most of your marks really from factorization. Specifically in factorization, this gives the most marks. You're going to get marks when they ask you to factorize. You're going to get marks when you finding x in equations. You're going to get marks when you're looking for the x-intercepts in functions, and actually so much more. You might even use it in like patterns and so many other stuff. But if you know this, it's going to help you out a lot. That's basically what I'm trying to get at. So I really hope that I can present this well, and I hope you can get something from this. So let's look at the strategy. This is probably the strategy that the teachers have taught you, but I'll go through it once more, and I'll try to emphasize a couple of stuff. So the strategy here is we need to find the factors of ax squared. Okay, this is supposed to be a squared. So of ax squared and c. So the factors of ax squared and c, such that when you multiply them, they have to give you c, and if you add them, they have to give you b. The tricky part of this is actually choosing the correct signs. Finding the factors is pretty easy, but choosing the correct signs in different situations is going to be the tricky part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the different iterations of the sign changes for b and c. So when b and c is either positive or negative, and just show how to deal with them. The method is always going to be the same. It's just that, you want to get a jump on some of these things. You don't want it to sneak up on you. So it's better to just kind of learn it now than try to freestyle it later on, which you can, possible, but let's go through it now. So this stuff is really mainly applied in parabola functions. Parabola, which is like, well, functions in general are like the building blocks of pretty much all systems in the world, but we'll get to that later on. For now, let's just get a jump on it. All right, so first example is when b and c are positive, which gives us this form. All right, so what we're going to be going through here is we're going to be looking at the factors of this here and this. So with a being 1, the factors for x squared are always going to be pretty simple. They're going to be x and x, very simply, not much problem there. And for the factors of 6, we actually have 2 sets of factors. We have either 2 and 3, or we have 6 and 1. Now we are going to explore both of these. So we're going to explore both of these. A lot of the time, you're probably just going to have to go through one. Sometimes you have to go through both of them. Sometimes you might have 3 sets or 4 sets of factors that you have to go through. So as we're going through this, I'm going to look at all the sets and yeah, just show you how to do the trial and error of this. So as we outlined in the strategy, we will be multiplying. So we have to multiply these terms. So we're going to be multiplying x and 2x. Well, x and 2, which is just going to give us 2x, right? And then we're going to multiply x with 3, which gives us 3x. We add these together, they give us 5x, which is exactly our middle term here. Alright, so once we get that, we already know that our factorization is correct. So the good thing, the reason why this is so easy, right, when we have b and c both being positive, is you already know that your signs here are going to be positive. So if both b and c are positive, your signs are going to be positive. And then of course you're going to have your factors for x right here. And then here, since we use 2 and 3, on the right side of the plus sign, you're going to have 2 here, and then you're going to have 3 here. And this will be cleanly factorized. This is how you get the factorized answer. We can multiply this out just to see if what we did was correct. So if we multiply x and x, we get x squared. We multiply x plus 3, x and 3, we get plus 3x. We multiply 2 and x, we get plus 2x. And then we multiply 2 and 3, we get plus 6, which gives us x squared plus 5x plus 6. So our factorization is more than correct. It was also possible that you would have actually started with 1 and 6, right? So in this case, if you were to multiply 1 times 6, 1 times x, you will get x, and x times 6 will give you 6x. But you will see if you add these up, it will give you 7x, which is not what we have here in the middle. So as soon as you see that, you can already eliminate that. So you can actually start either at the top or at the bottom. The more you factorize, the quicker you are going to be able to pick the right factors for it. But yeah, this is the simplest one. So let's go on to the next one. So the next one gets a bit trickier. Here we have b is negative and c is positive. So we get something in this form right here. So here we have the example, x squared minus 7x plus 12. Alright, so what do we have here? We'll do the same thing we did before. We find the factors of x squared, which are going to be x and x, right? And then we find the factors of 12. So in this case, we will use 3 and 4, right? Okay. So 3 and 4 are factors of 12. If we multiply 3 and 4 together, we get 12. So now we're going to multiply x and 3. We get 3x. We multiply x and 4, we got 4x. And if we add these two up, we get 7x. Alright, so just like that, we already have this thing right here in the middle. So we know on the right track, but we also have to notice something. Here we actually have a negative 7x, but then here we have a positive 7x, which means that actually to make this work, we're actually gonna have to have this 3x as a negative and this 4x as a negative to be able to get a negative 7x, which means that the factors that we actually had to start with were negative 3 and negative 4, which still, if you multiply negative 3 and a negative 4, the negatives cancel out to give you a positive, so you still get a positive 12. So in general, we can even come up with the rule. Whenever you get this situation, right, in which you have b is negative and c is positive, both your factors, are negative. This really doesn't change ever, as long as, but you have to be careful with the order. B has to be negative and C has to be positive. If that's the case, both factors are negative, as we can see here, right? Both of these factors right here are negative. All right, so how that works in practice, we do the same thing we did before. We open up our brackets here. All right, and since they're both going to be negative, we just put the negative here. We put our x's here and here, and our factors here are going to be 3 and 4, and just like that, it's factorized. You can check if this is correct. I hope you take my word for it that it's correct, but yeah, you can check it at home just to see if you multiply it out, just to check if it's correct. This will always be good exercise. The more math you do, the better you become. All right, let's move on to the next one. So here we have b is positive, c is negative. These ones get a bit trickier. So the previous two are probably the easiest ones. The next two that we're going to be doing are the tougher ones, because now you have to see whether b or c is larger or not. But let's just do what we've done before. The factors of x squared, x and x. All right, simple enough, right? The factors of 18. All right, so factors of 18, we can get many different forms, so I'm going to use 6 and 3. All right, so I'm going to be using 6 and 3. Multiply those, and if we multiply x with 6, we're going to get a 6x. We multiply 3 with x, we get a 3x. Right? If we just add them like this, it will give us a 9x, which is not what we want here. But we can then start playing around with the signs, right? In this case, the way to choose the correct signs is look at this number here, right? So as soon as you see this, right, you see b is positive and c is negative, right? What this means is, so one of the factors will be negative and the other one will be positive. So we have to choose which one will be positive, which one will be negative. If both of these, the signs are different, it means we're going to have a subtraction basically. So if one is positive and the other one is negative, we're going to have a clean subtraction. And since this one here, right, is positive, right, that means that the larger number has to be positive and the smaller number has to be negative. Because in that case, if this is positive 6x and this is negative 3x, what we're going to be left with is a positive 3x, which is exactly what we have here. So this one gets a little bit tricky because it's very important to realize that the middle number, the b, so the value of b is really going to be determined, heavily dependent on the sign. So you have to pick your signs so that the value of b here, you can get the value of b with the correct sign. All right, if we factorize this, we know one will be positive and the other one will be negative. In this case, the order doesn't matter. We will have x, or we'll have x. Here, 6 is positive, and then 3 will be negative. And there it is, nice and factorized. All right, let's move on. Again, another trickier one. So we have b and c are negative, and the same theory applies as the previous one, right? So one of the factors will be negative and the other factor will be positive, right? So let's put down our factors right here. We have x, right? Factors of 3, that will be 1 and 3. All right, so now we have to choose our signs. So we know we're going to have a subtraction here. If we have this always is going to always imply that we're going to have a subtraction whenever we're dealing with what's going to happen here. So we're going to have an x times 1, and then we're going to have x times 3, which is going to give us a 3x. So if we're subtracting these two, in order to get a negative 2x, the larger number, which here is going to be 3x, has to be the one that's negative, and the smaller number is going to be positive, so that when we subtract these, we end up with a negative answer. So as long as the larger one is negative, we're always going to end up with a negative number. And in this case, we're going to be, that means that our 3 is going to be negative. And then we just do the same thing we've done all this time. We have x, we have a positive, we have a negative. That 3 will be negative, the 1 will be positive, and there it is, factorized. Again, please check this at home. All right, so I think this is going to be the last example. This video has already taken way more time than out of flight. So this one is actually pretty simple, right? This is a new case I'm going to introduce. So a will be 1 still, but it's going to be a negative. So either b and c are going to be negative. B and c are always going to have different signs, but I'm just going to try to show you how to deal with the negative number here. So the first thing you do here, right, is you factorize out the negative. So if you factorize out the negative here, so you basically take out a negative 1 as a common factor. So you're left with x squared, and then you're going to be left with a negative x, and then you're going to be left with a negative 2, because in order to get a positive x, you have to multiply the negative 1 with the negative x, and in order to get a positive 2, you have to multiply the negative 1 with the negative 2. After you take out the common factor right there, then we can just do what we've always done before. Since here we have 2 negatives, that means that we're going to have a negative and a positive. So x factors of 2 are going to be 1 and 2. And since here we have a negative, b is a negative, that means that the larger number has to be negative. So here we get an x times negative 2, we get negative 2x. Add those two up, and we get a negative x. And our factorized form is simply going to be here x plus minus positive 1, negative 2. And those are basically all the different cases when dealing with trinomial in which the value of a is equals to 1, so the coefficient is 1. This will require a lot of practice. I'm going to do a summary at the end, and we're going to go through more examples, but I hope for now that these are enough just to get you to see the picture and to help you with whatever task you're dealing with. So yeah, this is the end of the video. I hope you learned something, and please like, subscribe, share, comment, tell us what we can improve, tell us what you like, and I'll see you guys next time. Godspeed, everybody. Cheers.